It's time to grab those nostalgic controllers, time travelers. We're booting up the NES for a fresh quest in pixelated realms. Dive into the modern magic of 5 novel NES homebrew games, where today's creativity meets yesteryear's charm. These aren't your old cartridges. They're new adventures with that sweet, sweet retro flavor. Are you ready to play a modern version of the past and the present? Well, let's dig in. Alright, so here we have the long overdue Rugrats on the NES. It's kind of amazing that the NES came out so many years ago, and yet, here we are in 2024, and we're still getting licensed games for the system. Who would have thought? Developers must have said, you know what the NES really needs? More babies in diapers fighting bosses. And honestly, I'm not even mad about it. Now, I think this game fits right at home with other decent platformers that are on the system. I mean, the babies are just out here trying to save the world and avoid nap time. What more could you want? In Rugrats, you play as Tommy, Chucky, Phil, or Lil. And here's where it gets interesting. The game borrows heavily from Super Mario Bros. 2. If you're gonna borrow from the best, right? Each character has their own ability. Tommy's your well-rounded guy, basically Mario. Chucky's the awkward one with a higher jump, kinda like Luigi. But, you know, with glasses. Phil's like Toad, he's picking up blocks like crazy. And Lil, well, she can float by holding down the jump button, just like the princess. Now don't get me wrong, they're not exact copies, but the comparison's there. Except for one big difference. If a character dies during the level, you don't get to use them for the rest of it. So, yeah, if Chucky takes a hit, guess who's sitting out till next time? So you better hope you don't need that extra jump. Oh, and by the way, did I mention you can switch characters mid-level? You need Chucky to jump higher, or Phil's quick block lifting abilities? Well, go for it. Unless they died. Then, of course, well, good luck. Speaking of mechanics, all of your characters have a butt bounce. And this is how you actually take out enemies. You can also knock enemies down and pick them up, and you give them a toss. I guess babies are stronger than we give them credit for. The controls are simple. You use the A button to jump, and the B button to pull objects out of the ground or pick up the knocked out enemies. Your goal in each level is to explore and find a screwdriver to open the gate to get to the boss. And while you're at it, you'll be collecting Reptar coins. Collect enough, and something special happens at the end. Or so I've heard. I'm hoping for like a Reptar parade. The level design here is solid. You've got all your favorite spots, kitchens, sandboxes, jungles, and more. There's even familiar faces like Grandpa and Tommy's mom. And of course, each level ends with a boss fight because, I mean, they're babies. They fight bosses on the NES. What a time to be alive. As for the controls, they're tight. Each character handles just a bit differently, and you need to find the right one for the job as you go. Now, honestly, the game is pretty easy to get into at first. But don't be fooled, things do ramp up. This one isn't just for babies. It's actually kind of challenging at times. Think Super Mario Bros. 2 levels of difficulty. Just don't say I didn't warn you. Now, as far as the story goes, well, there's something about babies playing video games and adults saying stuff. Honestly, I didn't pay too much attention. But there are cutscenes. And for an NES game, they look pretty great. Had I seen these back in the day, my mind would have been blown. The characters here just pop. The sprites are big and colorful, and you can actually tell what everything is. Which, let's be honest, sometimes that's a big win for 8-bit games. Everything looks just like you'd expect. Maybe even better. And the music? It's good. You'll recognize the Rugrats theme song, it's done really well, and the whole soundtrack fits the vibe of the show. It's not gonna melt your face off with rockin' tunes, but you're playing as babies. You're not a metal band. So overall, I'd say you can't go wrong with this one. It's polished, it's fun, it offers a solid mix of platforming, puzzles, and boss fights. So whether you're a Rugrats fan, or just someone who's looking for a solid retro platformer, you might want to check this one out. It's proof that the NES still has some life in it. Who knew saving the world in diapers could be this much fun? Alright, The Adventures of Panzer III. Let's just start by saying, Pixelcraft Games is back. This is the third Panzer game, meaning they've been making these for a while now. But this time, they saved the best for last. What kind of game is it? Well, it's almost every kind of game. It's an action platformer, it's funny, it's got 11 levels, and it's got cameos out the wazoo from the NES Homebrew scene characters. You've got a Mega Man style pick your own level thing going on. Like 1 minute you're in the ocean, then you're in space, then you're riding a motorcycle. Pixelcraft must have been like, let's just make every game ever on one NES cart. You start off with 7 characters, and each one can run, jump, and use a weapon. You think that's simple? But no. Pixelcraft is like, we're gonna make you work. Some levels you'll need the bombs, others you'll be freezing enemies, or I don't know, maybe you're making coffee or something. But here's the kicker. You can beat the whole game with just Panzer. It's harder, but if you're one of those I can beat Dark Souls with no armor people, you'll be fine. The controls? Tight. The jumping? On point. Weapons? They shoot exactly how you want them to. No complaints there. This is one of those games where when you die, you can't even blame the game. You just gotta look in the mirror and say, yeah, I messed up. So what's the difficulty like? Well, it depends on who you bring to the level. Some characters are like, I got this. While others are like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here. So what about Panzer? Well, he's still a self-obsessed jerk, but in a funny way. The writing here is snappy, the dialogue is absurd, and you're probably going to be laughing as you blast through levels, which is a good thing, because if you weren't laughing, you might be crying. That's how hard some of these levels will get. Now visually, Panzer's tiny. I mean, the dude is small, you might need to break out a magnifying glass. But the cutscenes, they go big. They give you that Ninja Gaiden style cutscene, but, you know, less ninja action and more like this dude is full of himself. But that's what adds a lot of character to the game, so I'm not complaining. And the music? Oh, the music. Whether you're riding the train or swimming with the fishes, each level's soundtrack slaps. The auto-scrolling train level in particular, chef's kiss. You're riding along and it's like, whoa, this is getting intense. At the end of the day, there's really nothing bad to say about Panzer III. It's like Mega Man, but funnier. Meaning, it's an action platformer with humor, tight controls, and a bunch of gameplay styles rolled into one. Pixelcraft Games nailed it. You gotta play this one. This is Data Man, a game where your mission is clear. Save the CPU or die trying. You think you're ready? You're not ready. This one's from Dark Bits and Broke Studio, who clearly asked, what if we made a game where you're constantly on the verge of a nervous breakdown? And you know what? It works. You're this dude, Data Man, and your job is to defend the CPU from an endless onslaught of what I can only describe as the bug equivalent of a bad rash. Just when you think you've gotten rid of them, they come back twice as strong. These bugs swarm from all directions. You clear a path, and then the nest starts spitting them out faster than you can blink. We're not even going to talk about the boss fights because I'm just not ready for that. You've got a laser blaster that sounds like it's straight out of the Magnavox Odyssey 2. I know, obscure reference. And while it sounds like an old faucet dripping, it actually does get the job done. Toss in some grenades when things get really spicy, and then of course the MVP here is overload mode. When your energy meter fills up, you hit start, and your gunfire goes from small pews to big pews. It's faster, it's harder, and trust me, you need this. When the screen is filled with bugs trying to eat your CPU alive, overload mode feels like it's going to hit the spot. The controls here are tighter than your pants after a Thanksgiving date night. You use the D-pad to move, the B button to shoot, and A button to lob grenades. You're mostly running around dodging bugs and frantically collecting energy orbs so you can keep that overload magic going. Kinda like trying to run a marathon with a swarm of hornets chasing you. It's motivating, right? But guess what? The bugs don't care about your feelings. They're here to wreck your day, they swarm, they sting, and when they overload the CPU, the whole screen goes full meltdown mode. I'm talking glitched out, corrupted, game over screen that makes you feel like your cartridge just had a physical breakdown. It's actually genius and horrifying at the same time. A+ for world building. Now visually, Data Man is slicker than your greased weasel. The bugs are crisp, and the CPU shows damage as it happens. And really, the whole screen feels like a finely tuned machine, running smooth even when everything is going off the rails. And let's talk about the soundtrack. It's like the music knows you're on the verge of panic and cranks up the tension to match. You're blasting bugs left and right, the music is pounding, and you're like, I've got this! Wait, no, I don't. So this is a game where you can't even think about relaxing. Just when you think you got the hang of it, the game's like, here's 50 more enemies, good luck. At least there's a co-op mode, so you and a friend can share the suffering. Not that I had a friend around to try it, but it's good to know it's there. So thoughts on Data Man? It's like being dropped into a blender full of bugs and being told to survive. It's fast, it's chaotic, and trying to build overload mode so you can take down a swarm of enemies is a lot of fun. If you like your games intense and unforgiving, this one might be for you. You save the CPU, save the world. And if you're me, maybe you'll throw your controller at the end for good measure. Alright, now let's take a look at 8-bit Brix. And let's just start by saying, LEGO video games are as popular as ever, folks. This game, 2 games in one. First up, we've got a snake game. But not like that fancy Snake you play on your phone. No, this is NES Snake. It's like Tron, but for people who don't want to pay for a light cycle. So you and your buddy, or the computer if you have no friends. No, I'm not talking to you. I know you got friends. Anyway, you're just trying not to crash into each other. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. This game can be stress city. Next thing you know, you're yelling at your TV, "Why is this so hard?" For an NES game, yeah, it's intense. And a little fun side fact, this is literally the only Snake game on the NES, so it's historic. And you want to be part of history, right? But wait. There's more. We've got the main feature here, the design studio. This is where you make your own NES sprites out of Lego-like blocks. So you have a cursor, some colors, and you go crazy. You've created this weird blob of what's supposed to be Mario, but now it looks more like Toad after a bad night. Or you can use a randomizer button. And because we all know how good I am at art, I hit randomize and I just pretend I'm creative. Boom, look at that. And don't forget Toby. Yeah, they even threw in a random Toby button. Everybody loves Toby. You love Toby. Oh, and did I mention there's a physical companion to this? You can get a real 8-bit Brix set. I've got the Toby set, so that you can build stuff in the game and in real life. We've come full circle, folks. Retro gaming and toys together, it's genius. It's madness. It's a mad genius. The graphics? Perfect for anyone who wants to create their own NES sprites. In fact, you can change the look from Lego to sprites, where you can see what it will look like shrunk down on your NES to a standard sprite size. How about the music? Well, this music goes bap 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 bap, just like most NES games. But what do you want from NES? No, I'm kidding, the music's pretty fun, as is the game. So whether you're going head to head in Snake, or you're building your weird, blocky 8-bit art, 8-bit Brix is here to entertain, frustrate, and maybe even make you feel creative in the best of ways. It's an NES experience you probably didn't know you needed or wanted, but now maybe you do. Guess who's crashing back into our lives and resurrecting NES games in 2024? Tengen Games, baby! Yeah, those legends who handed us Rolling Thunder and RBI Baseball are now dropping a new gem called Zed and Z. And I know some of you are wondering, how is Tengen still kicking in 2024? I don't know, but I'm glad they're here. Zed and Z is what you get when cyborgs decide to crash a puzzle convention and say, let's throw a wild party on the NES. You're playing as two robots, Zed or Z, on a noble quest to stop your creator from world domination. Deep stuff, right? Think Mario and Mega Man had a baby and sprinkled with a generous dose of, oh no, the robots are evil. Because you know, robots are always evil. It's classic. Zed and Z isn't your typical side-scrolling adventure. No, this is about single screens. Each level's its own little playground. Imagine playing Donkey Kong, but with robots and way more trampolines. Every screen throws a new set of challenges your way, keeping things fresh and frantic. As far as the controls go, you push B to dash, and you hit A to jump. And your main attack? You stomp on enemies. Yeah, robots have stomping feet too. Move over, Mario. And crushing the enemies is bizarrely satisfying. It's like making robot pancakes for breakfast. Speaking of pancakes, the controls are smoother than the butter on top. You're gonna be bouncing off trampolines and dodging spikes like they're tax audits. It's chaotic, but it feels good. You mess up? Well, that's on you, pal. This game is hard, but fair. Well, mostly. So what's up with the story? Well, Zed and Z realized their creator, Dr. Otto Matten, is the CEO of Evil Incorporated, and they decide to rebel against him. Their mission is to stop his world domination plans, one jump at a time. No plot twist, no character development. Just jump and stomp on the bad guys until they're toast, as you collect all the MacGuffins. Visually, Zed and Z remind me of games from the classic NES era. The colors are popping, and the sprites are charming, and it's just so NES. It's the kind of game that makes you nostalgic, even if you weren't born into the NES era. I once heard the phrase, this music is catchier than a cold in kindergarten. Now, I don't know about that here, but the music is upbeat, it's fun, and it'll have you bopping your head while you're bopping on enemies. As far as the difficulty goes, this is classic NES. For the first few levels, you're like, I got this, and you think you're about to win, and then bam, they hit you with a new thing you didn't see coming. But don't worry, there's a password system. This game wants you to suffer, but not too much. Oh, and also there's a battle mode. So after you save the world, you can throw down with a friend and see who's the real robot champion. Overall, Zed and Z is like finding an old arcade machine in your basement that still works. It's goofy, it's fun, and it has just the right amount of difficulty to make you want to keep trying. So whether you're playing solo or you're dragging a friend into the madness, This is NES nostalgia turned up to 11. Welcome to the epic ballad of Crater Song. Born from the brain of the mad genius behind the ore body universe, this game is what happens when your NES decides to go for its master's degree in mystification. Meet Arco and Minuet, the melodic tribe's own dynamic duo, whose singing doesn't just break glass, it breaks reality. This summons Nox. The Nox are party poopers from another dimension. This means Arco and Minuet are exiled for their sonic sins, so they're on a trek to a crater that might lift the curse. Crater Song isn't quite like any other NES game. It's kind of like trying to pat your head and rub your belly while solving a Rubik's Cube. You control both twins using two NES controllers. Because it's 2024 and we want to do something novel on the NES. Solo players, prepare your thumbs on both hands for some fancy gymnastics. And co-op players, get ready to blame each other for every misstep. At first, the controls might as well be in alien code, but stick with it and you'll be conducting like a pro. Is it time to sing? That select button is going to get more action than Taylor Swift at a fan meet and greet. Now the tutorial, to me, was cryptic, but once you get going, you'll figure it out. Puzzles in Crater Song range from, I see what you did there, to, what in the pixelated purgatory am I supposed to do? They can be cryptic, and they can be challenging, but crack the case, and you'll get that rush you need to start the next stage. So let's talk music. Jordan Davis has composed the soundtrack, and it's one that's so atmospheric, you're gonna check to see if your console is leaking fog. It's like the game has its own eerie lullaby guiding you through this sci-fi fairy tale, where every beep and boop tells a story. Yes, Crater Song is quirky, and it loves its secrets like a cat loves knocking things off tables. But once you get the hang of it, you're in for a treat. Here's what I enjoyed most about it. If you can grab a buddy for couch co-op, suddenly this challenging solo trek transforms into a laugh riot, where every mistake is a shared story. Soul Asylum once sang, "Misery loves company," and in Crater Song, so does puzzle solving. Plus, it's way more fun when you can blame each other for not hitting the right notes. So whether you're playing this as a lone wolf or as a dynamic duo, Crater Song offers a fresh take on puzzle games. It's a love letter to the NES era, written on the ink of innovation and the tears of gamers who thought they'd seen it all. Jump in, tune up, and maybe, just maybe, you can lift that curse. Or at least you'll have a good time trying. And so, my friends, we've reached the end of today's pixelated odyssey. And yet, in the grand game of life, this isn't game over. It's simply press to continue. We learned not every glitch in life is a flaw, but maybe a feature. We questioned why we ever thought blowing into a game's cartridge would fix them. Anyway, catch you next time, where maybe, just maybe, we'll figure out why Mario insists on this whole rescue the princess gig. Spoiler, Bowser is probably mushroom blocking him, because Mario can't resist a good power-up, if you get my drift.